What's up guys, it's me Jeremy. We all know that Overwatch lore is really just all about the heroes and their stories, but what's just as important are the locations that their stories take place in, and the maps that come from those locations that we get to fight on while playing the game. And there are currently 15 very different map locations to play on, thrown into a total of 5 different gameplay types, and Blizzard's always working on getting new maps for us to enjoy, and ever since the beta we've seen and really heard all sorts of information around new possible locations for maps in the future. There's a ton of official lore articles, video shorts, and in-game Easter eggs that hint towards other locations in the game that might end up being playable maps in the future. And so if you guys enjoyed the video, definitely hit that like button, and let's get started. Now, the development team has always been really open about the game's design and how excited they really are for each map that comes down the pipeline, and very recently, the game director, Jeff Kaplan himself, was actually talking about the future of map locations on the official forums, and here's what he had to say, and I quote, "We're trying to build out an entire world. Some locations will feature hero backstory in the forefront. Other locations are places we want to develop over time. We also really enjoy hearing what our players react to. It inspires us to chase directions we might not have otherwise." And there's definitely quite a few things that we can take away from this statement from Jeff Kaplan. So firstly, there are definitely going to be more maps in the future. You know, Overwatch is going to add maps to the game for quite some time, and potentially even new gameplay modes from those maps as well. Not really a huge surprise, but it's definitely nice to be reassured that they have no intention of letting the map pool run dry anytime soon, and that these maps will most likely be just as unique and interesting as all the maps that we currently have. Secondly, we see that they're still listening to player feedback and what we react to as players to guide the direction of what maps we're actually going to play on. And there's been quite a lot of feedback and requests from players for maps that resemble places we've seen or heard of in other Overwatch media Blizzard has created, and there's quite a few that come to mind. Firstly, of course, we have Somewhere in Australia, which is the only content that hasn't had a map yet, kind of. There's actually quite a lot of lore here with both Junkrat and Roadhog's backstory, as well as a video short and a comic, all surrounding events that take place in Australia. And there's a ton of possibilities here, you know. And right off the bat, we know about the irradiated wasteland that was once the Outback, which is nearly uninhabitable now since the Australian Omnium was destroyed during the Omnic Crisis. And this is where the Junkers live in a place called Junkertown. Imagine a map with homes and hovels that are made up of the old Omnic husks, you know, scrap metal and general junk-like tires and stuff, littered with outlaws and dirt roads like maybe from Mad Max or something like that. You start to get the picture of what this map could maybe be. It's a prime location for a map that's the complete opposite of the clean tech-centric locations such as Numbani or the city streets of Lijiang. But there's certainly a lot of potential and definitely a lot of room in the story for a map to be made in Australia in the future. Now, it is true that Australia is the only continent left on planet Earth that has not received an Overwatch map, but I did say kind of, and the reason why is that South America is definitely another continent that could use some map love as well, because the only map that has taken place in South America is the mini-game arcade map of Rio that we had for Lucio Ball during the Summer Games event. Now, that doesn't exactly qualify as a proper map, to be fair, right? You know, other than that, nothing's been created around any location in South America so far. There's some great potential locations for maps here. You know, Blizzard could definitely flesh out the Rio or Brazil idea from the Lucio Ball map into maybe a fully fledged area for normal modes. The city definitely looked clean and tech heavy during the event with that bright blue sky and lots of activity going on in the background. Or maybe they would go for like a hilly backwater town in Chile where you have to push a payload up a curvy side hill, complete with cliffs and hazards and all sorts of stuff. More of like a linear map style that we haven't really seen in Overwatch yet. Another location as well could be the jam-packed streets and the tourist areas of Buenos Aires right there on the coast of Argentina. You know, there's quite a bit of history there with some nice architecture and locale. Could definitely be a great spot for a capture point map, or maybe something new entirely. Now, in the main Overwatch story, the group reached a global power status and settled their base of operations in Switzerland. There was an era of peace and prosperity as Overwatch policed the world, set up bases for scientific research, exploration, and technological innovations, and all sorts of stuff, of course. However, through all this awesome stuff Overwatch was doing, a constant internal battle between Gabriel Reyes and Jack Morrison was coming to a head. Eventually, an actual fight broke out between the leaders, which led to an explosion, leaving the Overwatch Switzerland facility in ruins and a lot of people dead. Sounds like a great place for a potential future map, actually. Now, a lot of the maps in Overwatch are like really neat and tidy, and a completely ruined base in the Swiss Alps could easily fit the bill of both just like this epic location and a really lore-friendly kind of area. And for our next map, we're going off of the lore again. So tucked into the Rocky Mountains of Colorado, USA, sits Watchpoint Grand Mesa. Now, this is the only Watchpoint in the lore that we know about that doesn't actually have a map to go alongside its lore. So we've got Watchpoint Gibraltar and Watchpoint Antarctica, which were both mentioned and realized in the game, and so it's probably only a matter of time before we get a glimpse into Grand Mesa's story and layout. Grand Mesa is like a really mountainous and rural area with national parks and rocky terrain, lots of forest and lake areas too, so it's not a stretch to see a map environment like this, being very resort-like almost. Think mountain camping, log cabins, hiking, and that sort of thing, and you probably wouldn't be too far off for what that potential map might look like. And right in the middle of it all would be the Watchpoint that has all the technology and architecture design we've seen in all the other Watchpoints too, but with some major decorating changes because after the shutdown of the Watchpoint, Helix Security International actually took over the facility. Helix, of course, being the private security company that Pharaoh works for. The Watchpoint is also the place that was attacked in the Soldier 76 teaser, revealing a mysterious figure, Soldier 76 of course, stealing a pulse rifle from it. So you could definitely expect some experimental weapons and tech being worked on for Helix at this point in time. Now, one country that has a massive place in the Overwatch lore and backstory, but actually has very little revealed about it in the game, is India. The subcontinent was the location for some massive fighting and battlegrounds during the Omnic Crisis, and most of its population was actually displaced after the war was over. The Vishkar Corporation, which is what Symmetra works for, stepped in to restructure the fractured country and bring order to the chaos, hence the whole Symmetra's perfect reality kind of story. And this presents a great opportunity for the Overwatch team to capitalize on possible map locations and styles in the area. India as a whole is ancient and full of amazing culture and architecture that could definitely fit right in with region-specific art styles on maps like Temple of Anubis, for example. And there's definitely loads of options and tons of backstory in the region as a whole, and it could definitely make sense for a map in the future. Now, one of the most requested map locations by the really just fan base of Overwatch, and definitely one that I gotta say would just be the coolest map to see in the future, would be the Horizon Lunar Colony, which is first visualized in the Overwatch animated short of Recall, where Winston was first genetically enhanced for prolonged space research. We see him interacting with Dr. Harold Winston and learning all about science and things while snacking on some peanut butter. The Lunar Colony is a huge centerpiece in the current lore and timeline of Overwatch that could make just such a cool place for a map and a potential new game mode as well. Low gravity gunfights maybe could be amazing and definitely fit into Overwatch, at least as a part of the arcade I guess, if not something more. Now, the colony in the lore was actually taken over by the genetically enhanced gorillas that we kind of mentioned, essentially Winston and his brothers, and it's assumed that they are still in control of the facility today actually, so perhaps we could maybe see remnants of the struggle for control left behind there, or maybe discover what happened to the new inhabitants after the colony was left abandoned by the humans. It could be also a perfect place to stuff a ton of Winston's lore and story, as well as skins and voice lines for everyone's favorite scientist. Either way though, that's just about going to wrap things up today for some maps that could potentially exist in the future of Overwatch. Definitely let us know in the comments section below which one you would maybe like to see come to the game in the future. And if you guys enjoyed the video, definitely hit that like button. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.